Here we are with Peter Van Garderen from Orcfax protocol, the Oracle, decentralized Oracle chain on Cardano, and we're really excited to have him here. We're going to pick his brain. We're going to talk to him about a lot of exciting events that they have coming up right now, some catalyst proposals, and like how much Cardano blockchain actually needs this service that you guys are pioneering in many ways. And so thank you so much for being here, Peter.
Yeah, thanks, Derek. Thanks for inviting me, and I look forward to our chat.
To get things off, I'm just curious personally, what is a digital archivist?
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess let's start with the noun before the adjective. What's an archivist?
Yes.
An archivist is a professional that helps to collect and preserve historical documents and make them available for future access and reuse. And that's typically done like in an archival repository in archives. Like, so we have national archives, state archives, your local city or county will have an archives. And that's where all the documents that were important to that particular organization are collected, such as like land title records and land registrations and like parking tickets and what have you. Like, so very early on in humanity, we figured out writing, and we need to keep track of how much beer was making it into the warehouses. So somebody figured out you can make a scratch in a clay tablet, and now we got cuneiform, and we're now selling, we're keeping records. And then somebody goes, oh, we got a lot of records. Like, I can't find the one I'm looking for. So then we figured out we should maybe stack them in order. And then we get even more records. And something like, maybe we should have a storehouse for these things so that we can find all the records. And so we don't have to go looking for the record over here or over there. So then suddenly we have what we would call an archival repository, a very rudimentary form of one, but we have evidence of those in Sumeria and so forth. And so the profession of archivist was born millennia ago. In the Egyptian age, we had the scribes recording on papyrus all the acts and deeds of the leaders. That stuff got written down, and they got rolled up into scrolls, and they got organized and cataloged and put into place. And that's what we would call an archives. Eventually, that became the Library of Alexandria, for example. So suddenly now we're at the point where like, okay, we have all this knowledge we've written down, we'll be able to categorize and organize it and find it again. What if we start collecting a whole bunch of it? And if we have a place like that and I read all of it, suddenly I have more knowledge, then I could have more agency as a human because I understand my world better. And so, but you need, that's great. And that's researchers. Researchers go to libraries and archives, read primary material, read secondary material, formulate new ideas, pose scientific theories and create new knowledge for humanity. So in order to create new knowledge, we need to have authentic records of existing knowledge. And so archivists are the people of the profession, like accountants and lawyers that have been around forever. We're just not as flashy or loud or expensive. And so we've been collecting and helping to organize and catalog humanity's records for millennia. And then somewhere along the line, we invented the microchip, and suddenly our records started appearing in digital form instead of paper. And it used to be really easy. In fact, as a matter of fact, I can go to, let's say, the secret archives of the Catholic Church, which is quote unquote secret. They have some public access as well. But I can walk up there and I can go to the reference desk and say, hey, I can search the cataloging system, which uses the software that I created 15 years ago, by the way. I wrote open source cataloging software for archives, libraries. That's now the most widely deployed cataloging system around the world, used by more archives libraries than any other product, to help store, organize, catalog, and make accessible humanity's memory. And so something I'm very proud of. And so what you can do is I can go say, hey, I would like to look at this record from 500 years ago. And assuming it's public and the Vatican's decided you get to see that, they got a lot of stuff that they decided we can't see. Why? Fill in your conspiracy theory here. So they come back with the box. And the box is an acid-free container so that it ensures that whatever's inside it, the humidity and other things don't eat away at the paper. And I can open it up and I can put on my white gloves and I can pull it out. And I've got a piece of paper from 500 years ago, right? And this piece of paper contains information and knowledge that somebody, an author with an intent to communicate a message, wrote down on a piece of paper 500 years ago. And for whatever reason he had, the intent of doing that was either to record beer in the warehouse, to let you know that our leader wasn't happy with what your decision you made over there, to let you know that the castle you live in doesn't actually belong to you because we've got this document here that proves it belongs to this guy over here instead, right? So there's a variety of reasons why we create records. And in archives, you say, for what is the business purpose? Like, what's the intent of that record? When I create a picture with my iPhone, I'm creating a record as well. It goes into my Apple iPhone camera roll. And the intent is that I want to capture the memories of my life, right? So that's my intent as an author of that particular record. So we are all record creators and record keepers and archivists by default. It's just that archivists are the formally recognized profession that does that for us. And so when I'm looking at that, and so what makes a digital archivist? So what's the difference between an archivist that helps to manage those collections and sits behind the reference desk and gets your papers for you and helps to organize the boxes in the back and, helps to catalog the stuff. What does that kind of profession look like in a digital age now that most of our records are digital? And so the key thing to understand there is that when I look at that record from 500 years ago in the secret archives of the Vatican, in their public reading room, you can go there today. It's really cool. If you're in Rome, you should check it out. It's awesome. It's really fun. What I can do is I can look at that paper, and the message is on the paper, right? There is content. The message contains content, which is writing, right? And it says I Derek so and so sold 500 bales of hay to Peter so and so on this and this date, and here's a seal to prove it from whoever was serving a notary function at the time, or some official from boom 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 stamp here or there, right? So I'm looking at this, and then somewhere along the way, Peter so and so back 500 years ago had scribbled some notes in the column about what got paid or didn't get paid, that kind of stuff, right? So now I'm looking at this, right? So what am I actually looking at? I'm looking at a record of transaction. I can see the content. I can see the intent of the message, what the intended outcome was for the author to its recipient. But more than that, there's a whole bunch of context I can see. I can see the actual physical stamp, like it stands out from the page. I can see the annotation scribbles that somebody has made post publication of that particular document, right? So there's a whole bunch of process and context associated with that document. It's not just the message, right? But I can see that because I have a physical material information object in my hand, right? Yeah, I would call it an information object. It's an object that has been described with information, and so there was human intent. Like there's artifacts, like there's natural artifacts, like people will study soil, like glacials and like soil layers. So the earth has left behind records that are earth records. Like there's if I could produce pottery, that's the output of some kind of human activity and intent to create something. But if there's no symbolism on it, or there's nothing that to indicate that there might be a message here, I wouldn't call it an archives. But any kind of object to me that contains information where the user had the intent to convey a message, to me is a record. It would be archival materials and archives. And so I would include in that definition cave paintings, for example. Cave wall paintings. There's a fascinating cave wall painting from Indonesia, prehistory, and that has different handprints on the wall,
hieroglyphics,
right? No, before that. This is this is caveman time, right? So they put some kind of ink on their hands, put it on the walls, right? And so now I can send you the picture later. It's a really cool story. But but the point I'm trying to make is that I believe that I would call that a record. I would call that wall a record because it's been imprinted with information. Like the original authors were communicating some type of message. I'm not an anthropologist. I don't know what that might be, but I know that there was somebody over there that wanted to had something important to say, that wanted to convey some message information, capture it for future memory. And the only technology they had at the time was some kind of ink they could put on their hand and stick their walls to a cave, right? Wow. So, but what I want to say is that I think the very same thing is still happening today when I create a PDF, right? Or when I write you an email. And so, or I take a picture with my camera on my iPhone. And so but the problem is that when I look at that record now, I've lost the context, right? Where's the seal? Where's the annotations? How do I know where this thing came from? Where did it come from? Where is it going? This PDF just magically appears. It's probably the 1,000th copy of it that's been written, rewritten, serialized and deserialized on one server platform over HTTP protocol, chunked up into HTTP chunks, reassembled on your side. And suddenly there you go, and there's a PDF. And we act like it's the same thing as taking a paper out of a box and going, hey, I got the record. When as a matter of fact, you have a proxy of a thing that represents the intent of the author a long time ago, but it no longer has the original. It has the original content, hopefully, if somebody preserved it correctly, and that's the job of a digital archivist. But it should also have, it should make the context explicit. And that's the most critical thing that archivists have done is in the digital world, is that we think that storing a file is archiving it. No, it's just storing it. I can pull this PDF back up, right? I can read it. But what is the context of its creation and use that it gives it the real meaning to help me really understand this document itself? So what archivists do, the number one role that a digital archivist does is provide really good metadata that says, here you go, here's your content, and here's the PDF. And yes, it's electronic, so we realize we get very philosophical, and I've been involved in archival science academia for a long time, to this idea that you can't actually preserve an electronic record. You can only preserve the ability to reproduce an electronic record. That makes any sense? So,
how does all this?
I'll bring it home for you now. So, so digital archivist, we're concerned with that problem. And so I've worked 20 years. I was a young graduate student that was lucky enough to come into that space out of archival science, was involved in that research. So I was an early researcher in that field, and then spun off, became a contractor, and then decided that we actually need open source software to help manage this stuff. So that I did that. And so that product I was telling you about is now there's a service company that I stepped aside from and left to good management to work on this stuff instead. But that's in place. And that was my work as a digital archivist, is to try to create systems that preserve the authenticity, context of creation and use of documents. And when we present it to you, that you as a human user can trust that what you're reading is true. Because the original document might have been a WordPerfect file created in 1998. But by the time it gets to you in 2024, it's now a PDF, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how can I trust all the various transformations that happened to get this message from there was an author's intent back in 1998 when he wrote a WordPerfect document, and now I'm the consumer of this information in 2024. How can I trust that the information I'm reading is authentic, trustworthy, and represents the original intent of the author? Wow. And you can imagine that we've completely lost that in the digital environment. It's a huge, wicked global problem. And so there's a small little group of us called digital archivists that have been spending time the last 15 years trying to solve that problem for the world. We don't get funded because there's no marketable value in saving all this stuff, because I can't resell it, or people don't realize they can't yet, but they will. But it's a lost leader. Like most organizations treat their archives as a lost leader. It's like we have to keep these records because the law says we have to keep our HR files for 20 years. So fine, we'll keep our HR files for 20 years or whatever, but we don't want to. We'd rather delete it because it costs money to put it in a warehouse. Oh, we can put it in digital. Great. We'll just dump it in this S3 bucket over here. And so now you've got a bunch of AR files dumped in the equivalent of your S3 bucket or whatever, without any context, right? So then you pull it out, and I as an archivist would say, I don't trust this. Like, tell me what happened to it. What'd you do to it? You just dumped it in S3 20 years ago. Now you want me to read it? Oh, it's in WordPerfect. How do I read that? You have some files for that? So digital archivists solve all those problems. Wow. They make sure that the content that was the digital content that was created at some point in the past is still fully usable, readable, renderable, and reusable. It's a digital asset. You should be able to repurpose that and use it in future systems. So you have to make sure you're using open standards, interoperable standards to make that stuff understandable. But again, the most critical thing that we do is as an archival service, as an archivist, when you say give me that PDF, what's implied when it's given to you by an archivist is trust. Like you're not being handed a PDF by your gas station attendant. You're being handed a PDF from an archivist, and that the social contract there is like, it's like the oath. Like it's like, doctors take an oath, right? Like archivists take our job really seriously, and we have very high ethical morals. The people that, like the majority of my colleagues that I know and work with, have these, and we actually have explicit ethics statements and so forth. And we considered our role in society to preserve information, protect its authenticity, make sure that it remains accessible despite of the changes in technology or or politics or how the world is organized. We need to preserve the memory of the world. And when whoever asks for it 5 years from now, 50 years from now, 500 years from now, it shouldn't matter what technology it was created in. They should be able to trust that the message is authentic and accurate, just like the cave paintings from millennia ago in Indonesia. But the problem becomes so much difficult because we're dealing with digital.
Yeah.
So a digital archivist is somebody who is trying to solve that wicked problem.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for all that work, because it sounds like a humble endeavor that is just challenging, but God, the world needs people like you. I mean, so thank you so much for that work. So it seems like a natural progression from all of that to the blockchain space, and how did you transition from doing that and then migrating to this beautiful protocol called Orcfax? By the way, tell me how you came up with the name, if you could weave that in there too, because I think it's a brilliant name. The
Thank
fact
you.
and so how did you do that? I mean, what spawned you into being motivated to create one of the most triangulated, decentralized Oracle blockchain has to offer?
This might be longer than 2-minute answer, if you're okay with that. But
Yeah, go ahead.
So I went through this process. I graduated from Archival Science Graduate School here in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, where I live, from the University of British Columbia, which has one of the best iSchools in the world. And so I came out as a graduate student active in this problem domain where we didn't have any answers yet. We were just like, we know we got a problem, and we had experts coming around, and I learned a lot from those people, and I got a lot of good mentorship at an early age. And so we kind of had like the scientific solution, but then I got kind of tired of all the workshops, and then people just wanted to write papers, and like a lot of academics just about ego and like not really about getting things done, in my opinion. So I got frustrated and left and just started my own contracting company, saying, okay, now we've learned all this stuff. We know what the problem is. Like, why isn't anybody building the solutions for it? And then soon enough, I figured out that the way for a young 30-year-old kid that had no reputation or anything else could compete with existing entrenched market players that were overpricing and overselling their products to libraries and archives, like i.e., think about like Elsevier and that kind of like all that kind of like model. And I'm happily say, come at me, Elsevier, if you want. I will happily name them in public. So realizing that my friends that I graduated archival science school with that are now working in archives, I had meanwhile gone to work for one of the archive software vendors because I love software, I love tech. So I came out of archive school. I helped launch and run the international research project on studying authentic electronic records. I worked at a local software company that made software for archives. And so I kind of looked around and going like, we don't have all the stuff we've been talking about, which we call digital preservation in digital archives. Like, how do you keep stuff accessible, usable into the future? There isn't actually any software. So we're all walking around, going to conferences, like feeling really smart, saying, oh yeah, we got this digital preservation problem, and this is what we should do. And like, oh great, where's the software to do it? So, me being me, I'm like, fine, I guess I'm the one that has to do it. But to get any attention at all and to compete with entrenched interests, I mean, we're talking like IBM, Microsoft type level things, right? So I went open source, and at a time when open source wasn't very popular. So I had to fight the battle of like, I managed to change like procurement procedures in several large organizations because it was designed not to allow open source purchases, for example, right? So that was an early battle, but it was definitely the right choice to say, I want to, so we need software that fixes this problem. The software should be open source so that we can save costs. So it doesn't, archives are a lot, like I said, loss leaders. So they have to like get everything they can out of every penny. If they're overpaying on technology, they're not spending money on cataloging records and making information more accessible. And there's some really large predatory vendors in that digital preservation space. I can't name them publicly now because, like I did earlier with the other company, because then it will get my old company into trouble. But I was really frustrated, and I could see, working on an archives vendor, how we were ripping off other archivists just by being a commercial software vendor that goes, oh, here's a little market with no competition, we can own it, we'll just charge what we want. So I got mad and made my own open source alternatives as part of my PhD thesis. I was working on a PhD thesis in this topic. And so I wanted to prototype a system. And I'm like, look, these things people are charging millions of dollars for, I can make in 3 months. And here it is. You can use it if you want. And then people started using it. And then more and more people started using it. And then within a year, I was like spending more time answering user forum questions and improving that software than writing my PhD thesis at the University of Amsterdam. So at some point I made the decision, well, I guess that's what I'm doing instead. So then I built an open source software service company to develop what's called access to memory, is the front end web-based interface that you would go to as a user to search a catalog in archives. And the back end is called Archivematica, which takes care of that digital preservation problem that says, okay, give us all your files. And then we've got all these things in place to monitor file format obsolescence, vendor lock-in, lost metadata, because like sometimes metadata is stuck in a file somewhere, you got to pull it out. So it's basically like this back-end system to manage the files, digital files, and then a front-end system to write access to it. So I developed those two things. and then marketed them, used the bounty model in open source, which is like, hey, here's a bunch of software, do you like it? And he's like, yeah, but I want feature X. I'm like, great. Let me do some calculations. It's going to take me, my team, 100 hours to give you feature X. So that would cost 20 grand. Do you have 20 grand? We're like, yeah, we got 20 grand. So here you go. So we're like, great, sign this contract, and all the code that we produce for this, we will then in turn open source so that you pay it forward. So thank you, University Archives X, for this contribution, our last release. In our next release, we now have all these new features that somebody else paid for, and are all free to you guys because somebody paid for it once. The work is done. The code is open source, and now you all get to use it for your own benefit. And to me, that was the only way to keep to solve the digital preservation problem in a sustainable way going forward. Because like we've seen it many times already. Like a government, like you would think, right, that the records of a country and preserving them and providing access to them would be important to the leaders of the country, right? But because we live in centralized systems, and we have people that might not share my same values arrive at a position of power where they get to make ultimate decisions on behalf of everybody, because once every 5 years we voted for their party, say, you know what, I don't think funding for national libraries is actually that important, so we're going to slash it in half, because really at the end, really underneath it's like they don't want an educated public, because that's a dangerous thing to people that want to control people, because knowledge is power. So anytime somebody tries to burn libraries or eliminate funding to libraries or archives, I take notice and I get angry. I'm trying to explain why I thought it was very important we take the open source route here, because I want it to be community owned. I want it to be a community owned asset and system that again was getting the biggest bang for the buck, right? Like a normal commercial company they'll spend their own 20 grand, build a feature, and then sell it to 100 different people for like 50 grand each, right? That's the commercial capitalist model, which is fine, but that shouldn't be applied to a public good like our human memory, right? Our human memory is more precious than that, right? It should be, right? So and so my solution was to build an open source platform, and it worked. Like I had a long-term vision, like that was my intent. And today I could proudly say, when I was a bit of a show off there when I told you about what my software is doing, but I can proudly, confidently say that. And so I have so then how did I get into crypto? I told you we'd be longer than 2 minutes. So now we're back to your question. And so while I was doing that work, and very much working from that mentality with that free open source mindset, which was a little bit more like cowboy and punk than the old traditional enterprise IT that most of our customers were used to. And that's fine. That's who I am. That was our brand. So I hired a lot of people that were already in the libertarian space, that were interested in cryptography and other things. So one of my staff showed up one day in 2011 and told me about this thing called Bitcoin. And I thought he was crazy, and I couldn't understand. He was one of my brightest people, and he would talk about stuff I couldn't understand half the time. So I was like, yeah, cool, Austin, thanks, that's really neat. And then he would persist, because he was like, no, you got to see. Like, and so he was one of the earliest Bitcoin miners ever. He lived in a slightly off-grid community and took the entire grid down at least 3 or 4 times, because he had like one of those first like Bitcoin mining rigs that he whipped up. Like he was spending all of his salary buying NVIDIA graphic cards. I'm like, Austin, are you okay? Like, you got to, do you need some money for rent? He's like, no. Like, he was just passionate, right? So, and he wouldn't stop. He was so passionate about the idea of Bitcoin. And he was one of the first people in my life that truly saw the potential, that was able to see what this would be like 10 years from now, right? And eventually it clicked. I got it. Like, because then the 2000, I was still suffering the 2008 crash. And my solution was to buy gold coins and stick them in the safety deposit box. That was my hedge against the inevitable inflation and the inevitable collapse that the money printing machine is going to unleash upon us any day now. I know we've been saying that. I still believe it's going to happen. And I think the only thing that's going to fight inflation is crypto and real estate. So, I'm continuing to work with that assumption, and that's why I'm in this space. So he got me interested in Bitcoin. I eventually understood. So I said, okay, fine. Rather than gold, maybe I should have a little bit of Bitcoin in my portfolio, so that when the zombie apocalypse happens, I at least have some of this Bitcoin. I can use that, to buy whatever I need. So that's how it started. And then one day so I was one of these early Bitcoin investors, and bought, sold, at crazy low prices, and we could tell funny stories about that. And what an insane billionaire Austin would be today if he hadn't spent it all on pizza and pot, but God bless him. And so then I heard Andreas Antonopoulos do a few speeches, and it blew my mind. Like, he was like, yeah, this Bitcoin thing is pretty good, right? But do you know there's a thing underneath it called blockchain? And it has this thing called distributed consensus. And that's actually that's really the powerful thing. He's like, Bitcoin's fun and cool, but just so you know, it's only the tip of the iceberg. That's just money. Like we just figured out a way to do distributed consensus. And right now we're just using it to like prove that I sent some currency to you and you received it. And now it's yours. But there's so many more things we can do with that technology. And the thing that it actually, the core, and so when I started to listen to it and start looking and thinking at it like as an archivist, with my mindset and the project I was working on, a big problem we still have in digital archival systems and the systems I was supporting and building was proving authenticity, right? Like it's like it used to be like when that archivist comes and shuffles out of the room from the secret archives and brings that box to you and puts it down, it's secret archives. There's locks, there's procedures and rules. And I myself have confidence in the security of this physical repository that this guy just came and brought this box back from. We don't have the equivalent in the digital world. Like how can I be assured that this PDF that you just went and got from over there and came over here and shuffled over here, that I know originally was a WordPerfect created in 98, but you're now presenting to me going, there you go, here's that document you asked for, and it's got all the original content and context that it had when the author created it. And I go, okay, but I didn't see you come out of the back room there with the box, right? Where did this PDF come from? It just appeared on my screen. Like, how can I assume that's trustworthy, right? How can I trust this information so that I can make sound decisions that aren't based on bad information or even worse, false information? So that's the same problem represented in the digital sphere. And then when blockchain came along, blockchain says, so when Andreas Antonopoulos said that, we've solved distributed consensus and you can use it for more than cryptocurrency. So then I saw that, everybody else said that. And then suddenly you get this wave of like mania of people going, we're going to put medical records on the blockchain. We're going to put property records on the blockchain. We're going to put your mother on the blockchain. And and everybody goes, yeah, blockchain. And there was the blockchain hype cycle. And then of course, unfortunately, we got into the NFT craze, which nearly threw the baby out with the bathwater. But the problem I had in digital archives was like proving the authenticity of that PDF. But when I started hearing that stuff, I'm like, wow, we've got a system for distributed consensus about whether something is true or not, right? Like, is this one Bitcoin in Peter's wallet right now, or is it in Derek's wallet? And you and you don't have to tell me that's true or not. You can look at your full node dataless node right now, and you don't have to trust me. You don't have to trust a bank. You don't have to trust Charles. You can go to your own node, and you yourself go, yeah, it's true. And we're in this network where I'm looking at so what the key breakthrough that blockchain technology gave us is that I know what I'm looking at is exactly what you're looking at. Like that's a really
crazy,
really fundamental. Yeah. It's a fundamentally powerful concept that we have not yet had in the history of information management. And so, it's called the Byzantine generals problem, right? For the nerds. Yes. So it's like we solved it. So in my opinion, that's a major breakthrough. I would put it on par with the invention of deployment of TCP/IP. You know how that changed the world. That's how you and I are talking over this little platform right now. Thank God for the internet. I would put it on par with GSM, right? The thing that turned all our phones into smartphones. Think about how that changed our lives, right? Like remember back to the old flip phone days to the point now where we're slaves to these little digital masters. So and I think that blockchain technology or solving the Byzantine's consensus problem is on par with those three inventions. Okay, like those inventions, breakthroughs, technology breakthroughs. And so when I saw that, I'm like, okay, this solves this problem for me that I've been having in archives. Is like, how do I prove this PDF I just showed you from my archive? So Secret Archives runs my system. At some point, they started having digital records as well, and they have the same problem. They're like, here, trust us. Here's that PDF. And right now, we're still using that old model. Like, this system is run by this archives on their servers behind this security wall. So we're trying to apply that same model of trust and reputation. Like the archives has a reputation. The records you want have been kept by custodians in charge of keeping records and taking care of them. And by the way, large organizations have their own corporate archives that perform the same function within the organization. There's lots of corporate archivists, right, that work, and most of them have become digital archivists, and they're all like desperate for solutions. And that's why my service company was created. So I think blockchain to me appealed to me because I realized as an archivist that solves this, like, is this document trustworthy? So if I can now use blockchain to create a veracity proof for this, add that to it, that'd be great. But then we ran into this problem of like, yeah, put everything on the blockchain. People didn't realize that, and in Cardano, for example, we have very limited transaction size. And so we don't put PDFs or MP3s or MP4s on the blockchain. There's no room for them. Every single blockchain, every L1 would grind to a halt as soon as people would do that. So there's a huge misunderstanding about when people say, oh, I'm using blockchain to like notarize my documents, you can trust it now. All they've done is got a glorified timestamp, because what you do is you take your document, you produce a hash for it, right? And then so now you've got a small string that's small enough to fit into a transaction on a blockchain. Mm-hmm. And that hash is content address hash, which means that if you have the same file and you run it through the same hashing algorithm, it should produce the same hash. If any bit or byte in that document is changed, it will produce a different hash. So that's the value of, again, that's the value of cryptography. So that I can compare hashes. So I can say I have this PDF right now on June 1st, 2024, and when I run it through this hashing algorithm, it produces this hash. So now so that's great. That proves that this document with this content and this context produces this hash, right? And so then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that hash, I'm going to put it inside a blockchain transaction, right? Because it turns out it's not just for cryptocurrency. There's some data, there's some room to put data there as well. So we can stick a bunch of hashes there, or for example, an Oracle datum, right? And we can stick that there. And then the blockchain is this giant distributed consensus mechanism that keeps churning along. And I think the most trustworthy one in the L1 space is Cardano. And that's why I'm building on Cardano. I intentionally chose Cardano for a number of these background reasons. And so what happens now then is, like, let's say we get 4 or 5 blocks, 2 days of blocks later, we know for a fact that it's going to be we know for a fact that it is impossible to change that hash in that block that's set there so long ago. And you on your daedalus node right now can go to that block and see that hash. And I can say to you, here you go, Derek, here's a PDF. You can trust it. We wrote it back on June 1st, 2021. We haven't changed anything. We haven't secretly changed the terms of the contract, blah, blah, blah. And you go, that's all fair and good, but I'll check for myself. So you take the PDF, you run it through a simple hashing algorithm, you have the hash, and they say, yeah, we timed. Again, I think the actual correct word to use from an engineering point of view is timestamp. They timestamped it, right? They didn't put a document on the blockchain. They're not storing anything on the blockchain because there's no room for it in L1s. So what they did was they put a hash for their document on the blockchain to provide you an authenticity proof that this document with this context and content existed at this point in time, and so then you can go, okay, then you get the document, you run through your hasher algorithm, you say, what block was that in? They're like, oh, that was block so-and-so. So you go to the block, you go to your block explorer, and you can see that in the inline datum is that hash. So that hash, it wasn't magic. It was created because somebody ran that PDF through hashing algorithm. So you go, okay, that's the hash. You took the PDF they sent you in an email, you run it through a hashing algorithm, it spits it out, and now you can compare it to the timestamp they put on the blockchain 5 days ago. And you know for a fact you're looking at the very same PDF with the same content and context as before, because if anybody changed anything, including in the header or hidden in the document or hidden secretly anywhere, if a single 1 or 0 was changed in the original document, it produces a different hash, right? So that is the power of blockchain, period. That's it. That's all it can do. It can't do anything more than that. It's stupid. Blockchains are stupid. Yeah, exactly. And so blockchains only know what's happening in their own network, in the blockchain network, right? So like Bitcoin is a very stupid blockchain, but wickedly simple, complex, and beautiful, because for the most part, Bitcoin is just worried about like moving satoshis around, right? So it's like, and is like, there is this wallet address that has this many satoshis associated with it, and there's this wallet address that has this many satoshi address with it, and you go, yeah, I have the private key that belongs to this wallet. So now I can authorize a transaction to move 5 of those satoshis to this wallet over here, and I would like to propose to the blockchain to do that, please. And the blockchain goes, fine. Do you have 5 satoshis to spend? Let's all go check that. Oh, yes, you do. Fantastic. Thank you very much. We will now move the 5 satoshis over to the other one, over to Derek's wallet over there. And then did Derek receive the 5 satoshis or not? And are they gone from Peter's wallet? Are we not double spending? And the blockchain is beautifully transparent that we can see all these things. And like, not everybody is as advanced as you is running their own full node dataless node. So then we invent block explorers to live on top of that kind of stuff, right? And then we start, which is great to make it more readable. But then the other thing is we start creating all these other layers where we now have trusted third-party data providers that said, hey, I'm reading the blockchain for you, and this is what I saw. To me, we're back to losing the actual value we had before, right? So
And
a lot of the projects I'm working on, so I'm trying to bring it back to that. So that is how I got involved in blockchain. Like, we were trying to solve a practical problem for this open source archiving system that I was building and supporting and maintaining and providing support for around the world. And I knew that, given I quit doing my PhD, but I never quit doing my research. And so maybe I'll eventually be a thesis, but I don't, what's the point? I don't want to become a professor. So my research just kept continuing. Like, it was just a natural evolution of my research agenda, which is a very interesting one, because now the last 2 years, I've stepped into the Web3 space going, okay, this blockchain thing is really powerful, but it's about to go sideways, and we're about to lose a baby with the bathwater because of all these like stupid NFT JPEG cowboys and meme bullshit. Like, where are the grown-ups in the room? Like, who's actually using this to fix the problem that society has? Who's actually interested in improving society, fixing things? I'm not the type of person to want to burn it all down and start over. I have 3 teenage children. I'm a responsible adult. I follow the law. I follow the rules. I want to do everything by the rules. So it's like, what tools do I have? And blockchain technology is a very powerful one. So I feel like I can use my expertise and work with other people that are similar stage in their career like me to quietly change the plumbing. Like, so I live in an old town here, and it's been 60 years since they put the street plumbing in. And so they're slowly going around tearing up the street and putting in new pipes, right? And putting it back down, and we get better water. We didn't think about it. Thank you very much. It's cleaner, faster, better water pressure. And I would I believe that blockchain engineers like myself that are working on these type solutions, and people that are decentralization advocates like myself that say there's problems with decentralized systems, I don't think the political route is not my route. That's not the kind of person I am. I'm more just a quiet person that's going around helping to rejig the plumbing and how we deliver water to people.
That's kind of what you guys are doing from what I'm getting when I read all the stuff you guys put out. As far as that plumbing within the infrastructure of what you could do, what's possible in Cardano,
Exactly.
as far as creating tooling and things like
that.
Well,
when I say, sorry to interrupt you,
no, go ahead.
I think, yeah. So I think it's beyond Cardano. Like, what I'm trying to say is, I think people that believe that there's something to this decentralized and blockchain more than just the get rich quick opportunity, is that we now have the ability to just quietly go around fixing the pipes. I mean, I know how government record keeping systems work. I created half of them that are running. I won't say who, but I have a lot of knowledge about how back-end systems work that run governments, that runs nations, that run everything, right? And if we provide better pipes with cleaner water that more fairly distributes knowledge and information, protects my privacy better, allows our leaders to make better decisions based on true, authentic knowledge, then I've done my job, right? And that's my job. Like, I'm just a plumber. Like, I'm just plumbing back here. I see a problem, and leave the place better than you left it be. What is it like? Leave it cleaner than you found it, right? Whatever, is that kind of philosophy, right? Like, it's like, okay, before I die, can I help make this world a little bit better for my 3 teens, and by extension, everybody else, right? I love the being an open source developer. Of course, I love Ubuntu, the software system. That's what we use as our default. And the philosophy of Ubuntu, whether this is true or not, it's not translated correctly. So I apologize to the people that have this word in their language, and if I'm misrepresenting it. But the one idea I've always liked about it is this idea of like, somebody came to a village and gave a small boy an apple. And thinking like, the boy's like, oh man, I got an apple. And then he watched the boy run off, and he told all his friends about the apple. And then he came back, and they're all sitting in a circle, right, with a knife, and he's cutting up the apple, and everybody gets a fair share. And then later the man goes, why did you do that? Like, that was your apple. Like, why don't you just chow down and enjoy it? And then he said, how can I be happy when my brothers and sisters aren't happy?
Oh man, that's great. I mean,
And I,
that's
and
powerful.
but now because we live in a global digital age, and the fact that I can talk to you over the internet from Vancouver and you're in Philadelphia,
Hmm.
like the concept of like who my brothers and sisters are to me personally is the 8 billion people on the planet now. I can't ignore it. I can't ignore that my brother is suffering over somewhere else. I
Hmm.
can't ignore the fact that I live in a place of privilege by the lottery of birth.
Hmm.
And so for me, it's like, how can I be happy when my brothers and sisters aren't happy?
Hmm.
And so I can become a politician, and we see where that goes. And so I ask myself, what's my skill set? Like, I'm an archivist, I'm a software developer, I make enterprise systems, I like blockchain, I have passion for social change. Um, Add all those things together, and here you go. I'm quietly changing the plumbing of how the world works,
Great.
the back end systems for the world works.
Yeah. With Orcfax, right? Um, I notice a lot of protocols out there right now they're trying to solve the problem that I think you're solving by trying to create their own solutions with their own Oracle solutions because it is so powerful. And I know that people focus on DeFi, and I get that DeFi is greatly impacted by the groundbreaking work from an Oracle, but Oracles go way beyond DeFi into almost like every fact statement that could be imaginable. And so projects like Liquid Finance, up and coming, are putting out written proposals that describe what it would be like to have Orcfax. You guys come in and help integrate so that they can just focus on doing what they're doing and not have to focus on being an Oracle. But that's DeFi. But what I'm interested in is also, you could speak to that too. Like how is that, and how are you guys different than most Oracle solutions out there? I know you guys have triangulated data. There's so many things that you guys that I think are different and very original and novel. And then it's more than DeFi. It's a lot more than I think what people are imagining when they think of oracles.
Let's start with what is an oracle, right?
Yep.
Maybe because um, oracles back in the ancient world, they were the people that would channel like messages from the gods and tell us humans, okay, Zeus said this, Zeus said that, right? So there's this intermediary between some world of what they consider to be fact,
Mm-hmm.
and channeling it out to this other dimension to say this
Mm-hmm.
is the message, right? So I love the analogy because oracles are very similar. I just told you earlier, like, a blockchain network is stupid, is dumb. It only knows what's happening in the network.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've done this other thing. Somebody else, Ethereum, came along and said, hey, Bitcoin's really cool. And that's really cool. But you know what? This deterministic system, we can put deterministic software on top that nobody that you can trust, that nobody's touched, because the code will execute the same way every single time. So when you have an input, you can trust that the processing logic is always going to work the same. So the output is always deterministic, and that's a smart contract. So that was the next stage of the revolution.
Mm-hmm.
And then boom, now we've got this like $1 trillion DeFi industry. And then the dirty little secret of the $1 trillion DeFi industry is that it relies on real world data to trigger action on the blockchain, right? Good example is a stop loss order, like a basic, you have 100 ADA, and when you say, when the price of ADA drops below 50 cents, I want you to sell it all, right? And that's an order you sitting in place that's represented as a smart contract on the blockchain. You trust it because like that's the rules I gave it, and I know it's going to run and do that because it's a deterministic smart contract that nobody can change because it lives on the blockchain, right? So nobody can mess with it. And then, sure enough, the order comes in and says, yeah, ADA's now, the price of ADA's reached this price, sell all your tokens, and it happens automatically. And this happens as we speak. It's happening in microseconds.
Yes.
All across Web3 as we speak. The issue with that is that you have to now trust the input, right? Like you have to say, if I've got, like, so you mentioned Liquid, for example, they're managing hundreds of millions of dollars of customer revenue in their platform, right? Like you're an investor and you want to take advantage of the cool products they have on the platform. And so, you put your money down. If this happens, that happens, I make money. If this happens, I lose money. That's okay. That's a calculated risk. That's, money I'm willing to lose. That's what DeFi investing is about. But it's still implied that when, this contract I have with the stop loss order I have is relying on accurate, authentic data coming in, telling it, yes, the price is actually this, right?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, all the existing platforms have their own backend API that is usually coming from a single source, a single
Mm-hmm.
data provider. And I'm not saying, we threw out one example there. This is true for all across the ecosystem, beyond Cardano. And so we need oracles to allow as you can imagine now, we're getting data from a single source. It's being packaged and relayed by the same provider that's telling you your contract just reached this point and I got the data to prove it. Here it is. And it's my own data that I got over here. And you got no way of seeing what API I read, what answer I got, how I repackaged it, how I pushed it to blockchain. You just have to trust my platform that we're telling the truth and that we are our Oracle data, the data that's coming from the outside world to feed into your smart contracts, is trustworthy and authentic. So up until now, we've all been kind of blindly closing our eyes that this is true. And I think for us to grow up and be a truly decentralized ecosystem, and for Cardano to show the way and to other L1s, is to have this like an independent decentralized oracle that is truly a decentralized oracle that has a capability to go into the real world, ask questions like, did this really happen? Is this really a fact? Have a process to, and then reuse that consensus technology to say, do we have consensus on this fact? If so, let's package it in a way to put it on chain so the smart contract can read it and execute. And now Liquid can say to its customers, you can trust us even more because you already trust us because we're a good brand and we're honest and we do what we do. And so you already come to us for that reason. But now you can have even more trust in our product because you don't have to worry that it was Liquid that provided the price and maybe somewhere in that pipeline of APIs that is invisible to me, I don't understand, a hacker has come in and made a change. And guess what? Lots of hackers have. And there's a hacker today, right now, as you speak, working on that problem, probably more than his problem, more than one, finding a way to exploit that data pipeline to insert false data before it hits a smart contract so that you can take advantage and hack and rip off money using false data inputs. So the Oracle solved that, or intended to solve that problem. And so the Oracle says, rather than trusting on you have a smart contract from a DeFi provider or DApp, and rather than, and it knows what's going on chain, it does stuff on chain, but rather than relying on it to tell you what's going on in the off-chain world, why don't you use an Oracle whose only purpose in life is to collect off-world data, like the original, like what is Zeus saying right now? What are the facts about the world? And but really validated facts according to international standards and principles on record keeping, according to rules for legal discovery and how you get a document submitted to in court case, because it goes through criteria like, is this document trustworthy, is it factual or not? So there's all these criteria we can apply to like whether something is authentic or trustworthy or not. So why don't you use an oracle that goes that really splits their hairs over worrying, that's their only purpose in life, is to make sure you get true authentic data. And so that it goes through this process, uses decentralized validation to make sure there isn't a single third party that has control over that pipeline. And then it puts it on the blockchain in an open standard that whatever you're doing, if you're Liquid or any other DeFi provider that has some kind of DApp that needs Oracle data, then you can come read Oracle data, you can consume it, and you can tell your DApp users, hey, that they're like, hey, wait a second, I don't think that was the price. You know, like, why did my contract execute? Like, where'd you get that number from? They can go, oh, well, we use an Oracle to provide our data. We happen to use Orcfax. Here's that transaction record. Here's the link. And if you like, you can follow that to your own local node and go check that block and make sure that datum is actually sitting there. So we can prove it to you that Orcfax published that datum. And when they did, we said, thank you for that input, Orcfax. We're going to put it into our smart contract and execute a smart contract. So now we've just further decentralized the trust environment, right? And that's necessary to go to full decentralization. We're on a path of gradual decentralization, but getting trustworthy decentralized oracles to participate in that is a critical blind spot and roadblock that we need to now get over to really move forward. Otherwise, we're just going to keep seeing more and more hacks, more and more distrust in founders, in honest founders who are just trying to build a good DeFi instrument, but the community's going, you're lying to me, I don't trust your data. So it's like, we need oracles now. We need to grow up and have oracles in our space. And so other ecosystems, Chainlink is the big one in the Ethereum and EVM type space. And they're well established and they provide that in that space. My opinion is that we haven't seen Chainlink come into the Cardano space yet, is the fact that doing an oracle on a UTXO model is way more difficult than doing it on a global state blockchain. Because with a global state blockchain, you can just publish to their database. A global state blockchain is just a database, in my opinion. It's not really a blockchain. So that's I think EVMs are bunk. But that said, what you can do is attack the global state, right? So you can. So it's very easy. There's a honeypot. Like EVMs are the honeypot of blockchains, and
like
so
hackers playground.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't have to all you can go is that very specific spot in the global state, do your hack, and boom, it's all. And so I think Charles himself was keeping a record at one point of like how much money is being lost on EVM chains, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that in itself is very difficult to do on the UTXO chain because we have no global stake
Mm-hmm.
by design. It's a security feature. It's
that's what,
like
I mean,
it's meant
that's what the whole that's what Bitcoin, right? It's like we're
exactly,
following, yeah,
exactly, and that's why knowing that and knowing what I knew about security architectures and blockchain architectures, I made a conscious choice to build my Oracle. I wanted to build an Oracle. I said blockchain needs an Oracle because I'm good at that. That's what I do. I know how to make systems that collect, store, validate facts, keep them open, accessible, and provide audit trails to prove where they came from, to prove that they're authentic. Create packaging that preserves the context and creation of their use. Provides an archiving system that keeps the data open, accessible in an open way that anybody can approach and access. So, I said, I think this is a big blind spot in blockchain. I want blockchain to work. Oracles, to me, are the biggest weak Achilles heel right now that nobody's noticing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an archivist that's good at like building systems that maintain, store, preserve authentic records.
Yeah.
Blockchains need that. So, which is the best blockchain, most secure, most forward proof, the one that's going to be around 20 years from now, and that's going to be Cardano. So that's where I want to build. And the UTXO model was fundamentally one of the reasons for that I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, that's what oracles do, provide a critical function. So I wanted to start with defining Oracle. You asked more questions about like, how do you even validate those facts and put them together and publish on chain. So I can get into that too, but I just want to take a breath, make sure I'm not.
Yeah, totally.
That's okay.
That's great because I think that's like the under the hood, inside baseball, and that it's got to be difficult to do that. But Orcfax could be accomplishing all of that and providing these solutions to other blockchains, I'm sure, in the future. I mean, you guys are in your incentivized testnet. You're about to come on mainnet. You're about to do CNT feeds. That's exciting. And it's just interesting. I mean, for me personally, I'm just super interested in how that works. So yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm a total nerd. I love it too, right? Like I'm having a time in my life as a solution architect working on this stuff. Like I wake up every morning excited by the problems, the technical problems, because it's just, there's just so much to solve. There's so much innovation to do. And what's exciting, like just before this call, I got off a call with another solution architect working on another kick-ass platform. And I was like, just that environment now that, I work for myself, I do whatever I want. People like what I do, they come join me, and then we form a team, and now we're sort of a company, but we're really blockchain Web3. We're just a bunch of people that like do the same thing and meet on Zoom and like build good software. And then, and so it has I love working in blockchain for that reason. Like there's just, we'll never solve all the problems. We're just going to keep refining them. Right. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I feel like I'm not just waking up, working on some stupid website, doing SEO for somebody, trying to sell somebody more ads for stuff they don't need. I feel like I'm using my skills to build technology that has a chance to move humanity forward. Mm-hmm. And even if it doesn't succeed, at least I'm enjoying my days. Like I feel it in my heart. I feel like I'm doing something worthwhile.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. That's great. So yeah, I mean, anything else you'd like to share about, because I'm coming up on you, in like an hour here, and gosh, I feel like I could talk to you forever and ever. But are there other things? I mean, there's proposals I wanted to get to that you guys have going on right now with your architecture, with staking. I voted in the staking. There's so many different directions. I'd love to have you back. What's most important to you right now to tell the community as far as what's on your mind, or anything else that you feel like you haven't left unsaid?
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, thanks, Derek. And I'd love to come back and chat some more because I feel like we're just scratching the surface so far, right?
Yeah.
So, but if I was to, what's the one message or one kind of update that I want to pass on to the Cardano community about the current state of Orcfax is that we're very close to being mainnet ready. Very, very close. We have a super interesting, innovative Cardano native token product that I think is going to be the most accurate, precise, and cost-effective way to come at Cardano native token and decentralized, trustworthy way to come at the current price of a Cardano native token block by block. And of course, we have other price feeds from centralized exchanges as well. So we're very close to launching. We've been running those on testnet now for a while. We had to do a major upgrade of our V0 protocol that didn't work out for us for a number of reasons. So that was part of the delay, was making that change. But also making sure that our V1 is future-proof, future compatible, so that if we do have to make upgrades and improvements in the future, that developers don't have to change on-chain contracts and have to do new security audits. That was very important to us. So we're getting very close now to being able to launch a product on mainnet, so that, for example, an awesome DeFi platform like Liquid could come and go, oh, hey guys, there's Orcfax finally has some datum feeds that we can use. We've been testing them in testnet, and it's ready for production now. Like, we want to get to that story with other providers and other users as well. And we will easily in the short term, and I think we're gonna have lots of cool stories to talk about these early integrations come Cardano Summit in October. Actual live functioning apps and dApps and smart contracts, and users using our feeds with their DeFi platforms. So I think at that point it become a lot more clear when people see it in action. But until then, I think the big message is to say that we're ready for business. We're about to launch, and then we're not just any ordinary Oracle. Like, if you given the explanation I just gave you, I intentionally wanted to build an Oracle because I believe that I believe as it's almost like an extension of the role of me as an archivist, as a digital archivist. What's the next thing to build? We should take advantage of this blockchain technology. The blockchain technology needs oracles. I think I can build an Oracle because I know how to build archiving record-keeping systems that produce records and statements of fact. And so then I built this Oracle. So the other thing I want to say is that we didn't build just any old Oracle. We just didn't build a thing that is able to take real world data, validate that it's correct, and stick it on chain. Mm-hmm. That whole process of how we collected it, how the data that was collected, like the source data, the primary data, we treat it like research data, like a research data package. And that it's formatted in open standards because I happen to be an expert in those standards. I help work on half of them. So we make sure that our data is as open, accessible, and reusable as possible. And so it goes to the Cardano publication process, but then afterwards, it's also that data is now published in an open, permissionless, decentralized storage network. We happen to use Arweave, but it's basically the exact same concept of IPFS. There's a number of advantages to why we chose Arweave over IPFS. Okay. That's a separate story, but that's the architecture. But the point being is that similar to you can run your own node, you can have your own Arweave decentralized storage node, and you can go to that package and pull it up from your node. You don't have to go back to Orcfax to read it. And you say, oh, that fact statement about the price of World Mobile Token you published back on October 1st on this and this date. I could see all the network messages that were being passed back and forth between the nodes, like all the raw messages. We just capture and log them and put them in this package, and then I can see the calculations that the validator run to take first of all I can see what the collectors did and how they reformatted it so that, because every API tells you something a little differently. So we have to have a common open schema to make sure that we're now in a common schema where it's lossless. We haven't lost any information. And now everybody's got it structured the same way. And now we're going to do validation. See, are you all seeing the same thing? Am I seeing what you're seeing? I collected this data about the price of WMT token right now. And this is what I did. And this is the calculations I ran. Those calculations are all open source and you can see what they do. And when you run the calculation, that produces a record of how the calculation was run and its output. And that also goes in the Autolog package. Then we go to our decentralized validator network and are you seeing what I'm seeing? Are you seeing the same fact statement as I am? Is it exactly the same? Yes. This fact is we can trust them that this fact is true, right? So because we're not just relying on one API or one data provider to go collect the data, package it, and send it to the blockchain. We're getting multiple nodes to do it, to the point where a validator network will have 100 validator nodes doing that. And so we've just increased the assumption of with authenticity, and authenticity is binary. It's either authentic or it's not. We've increased the reliability of the document and the trust you can have that it is authentic by hardening the process of the data gathering and proving that there was a process that went through to eliminate potential errors or fraud. And so all of that data then is packaged. It's put into a fact statement, and then there's a very small snippet at the end that says the price of WMT to ADA is whatever that value is, right? Okay. And that goes into an inline data, because the more characters you put in inline data, the more expensive it is to pay for your transaction. So we figured out a way to strip it down to the smallest size possible, so that we know for a fact that our Oracle publication format is the cheapest one on Cardano. And then what we do is there's a digital signature in that datum right? That digital signature links back to the transaction metadata sidecar in the transaction in the Cardano transaction, which is a feature that we have. And there you can put as much metadata as you want. In there we have JSON LD RDF triple metadata, which is like semantic metadata, which is like self-describing data. That's what all the LLMs are using now for their RAG systems. And that is also marked up using an open using schema.org ontology, which is used in the Web2 world for machine-to-machine reading. So when you go to Google right now and you do a search on somebody and you got a nice little clean little page of a Wikipedia snippet and all these other things, that's all using schema.org markup, because the machine can understand. If it goes to Wikipedia, it's just a bunch of text. But when you mark it up like that, you make it more explainable to the machine. You go, this is a person. This person was born on this date. This is the relationship. So using schema.org markup makes our data reusable, repurposable, self-describing. And so you can imagine if we start with price data, that alone is interesting. And all the things you can. So now we've done our first service. We've taken Oracle data, we published to a blockchain, and I don't want to waste that data. I'm an archivist. I'm going to stretch our dollar as long as we can. And so, by the way, we've done all this work. It's great. Why don't we put it over here? Who knows how we're going to reuse that data later? But it's valuable, right? Right now, that's just price data because it's the easiest place to start, and that's what people understand, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing DeFi, and that's a great place to start because it's a simple use case. But it's my proposal that this same methodology and the same system can apply to a wide variety of fact validation services for the real world. Like, did this really happen in the real world? Because if you think about it, the price of ADA to USD is actually is never stable. Like, when I say to you, what is it today? What can you tell me? I don't know what it is.
It's like 38 cents. Yeah. 39, 38.
So if I say, okay, so is that a fact? Is it a fact that the price of ADA to USD is 38 cents right now? No, it's as close to the facts as we can get, we think, right? Because it's based on a number of other facts. And the facts that it's based on is that as we speak, thousands of people are buying, selling ADA for USD and vice versa, right? And they're doing it on Binance, they're doing it on Kraken, right? And so at this very moment in time, people are buying and selling. There's markets for it. There's AMMs, right? So there's all these transactions happening around the world. These are events. These aren't facts. These are things happening, right? Which have outputs and other things. So really, when you think about it, when Kraken says right now, or CoinGecko says, but we prefer using an exchange that has its own order book rather than secondary information like something like CoinGecko provides. So let's go straight to the source. So Kraken says, okay, on our platform right now, there's 1,000 people buying, selling in ADA, and right now when we do the median calculation, the price comes at this, right? And it's like 0.36. And Binance says, oh, we're doing the same thing over here, and it came to like 0.39. And then a service like CoinGecko takes those and averages it and says, okay, the price is 0.0, whatever you just said, right? That's the actual price.
Yeah. Yep.
But there is no frozen fact in time that's the current price of ADA, because as we speak, people continue to buy and sell, and that number is shifting at any one point in time.
Yep.
So what are we really doing? We're saying we're freezing a point in time to say at this point in time, given all the stuff that's going on, if you stop right now for a second, what is the price of ADA USD given all of that, and then move on, right? So if I'm someone if push comes to shove and we really want to argue about what was the price of ADA at one point in time, you can go back through our nice and clean fact explorer that you can explore.orcfax.io, and you can go search for the fact statement that produced ADA USD in question, and then you can it will link you to the Arweave, open up the archival package, and then you can see what the calculations was based on. We can see the calculations we performed to determine that we said, okay, given everything we know about right now, all the buys, selling is going ADA USD, we want to say at this point in time, the value of ADA USD is 0.036. And we've got this, and we're going to timestamp it. So, we said that now. You can go to CoinGecko now and it says something different than it did 5 minutes ago. How do you know what it said 5 minutes ago? Unless they're not tied to the Internet Archive or anything else. That's the power of the blockchain. The blockchain is a memory system. Yeah. So that's the intent. Like, that's what the Oracle does, and that's what oracles can do better. And as far as I know, most oracles are not doing the post-end archiving service, which, of course, given my history, that's the kind of thing I would naturally gravitate to and see the value in. And so then the real value I see is that we're essentially funding and we're paying for, because remember I said lost leader before, nobody wants to pay to store archives. Well, people want to pay to get data on chain. So this is really my sneaky way as an archivist for no money to build a permanent data lake of open archival information that's permanently accessible in a decentralized network. It's going to start with price data. Think about sports score data. Think about weather data. And then where it's going to get really interesting is where let's say we take a political debate between two leaders that nobody trusts, and nobody really trusts what they say, and they believe that their mental capacity is questionable, their morals are questionable. And so let's start with a very basic concept. Can we just separate fact from opinion, first of all?
Mm-hmm.
Like there was a bunch of words said by one person, a bunch of words said by another person. We can have a transcript, right? With the kind of analysis that I am trained to do, I can go, this is an opinion. This is something that could be a fact. This is truly an opinion. This could be factual. There's ways to check that. So you could do that, break the speech down, grab the ones that are facts, and go do fact checking. And that people are doing that. Like, it's become a thing. Fact checking is a thing.
Right.
I'm sure there's people doing it right now, and they're going to say, Donald Trump lied about this, Joe Biden lied about that. And you go, okay, you're probably right, but you live in that echo chamber, and you live in that echo chamber. I don't believe either of you. Isn't there some kind of like decentralized fact validation system that I can just check to see what was fact, what was opinion, and then I can make my own opinions about that debate? That would be a useful thing, wouldn't it?
Huge. That'd be
and
huge.
Like, would I trust the outputs of that decentralized validation system that's open, transparent, telling me exactly what it's doing, how it's doing it? I can watch it do it, and then I can take the data at the end and go, thank you. And then I can go, okay, here's the list of facts about that. Here was his speech. There was 2 hours of bullshit. What were the actual facts? Okay, here you go. Here's 10 lists of facts that come out the other end. And now it's permanently archived on a data lake that you can now create all of the kinds of services on top. The main one I'm most interested in is taking, we have hallucinations in LLM AI models, right? Like,
yes.
So right? Yeah. So what we need, what is needed in the next generation of AI, by the way, we're nowhere near generalized AI yet. Like our overlords are nowhere near us. I'm more afraid of humans that learn to master this technology and turn themselves into overlords than actually AI turning us into overlords, right? That's the most immediate threat that exists today, right now, as we speak.
Yep.
There's people doing that. So for me, the biggest counterweight as a human that values human values, and one of them is like, it's more important that my brothers and sisters are happy that some people get really rich. That's my value. And so what I can do is I can build a system to start separating fact from opinion and from gaslighting, and allow me as a self-sovereign citizen to make my own decisions based on true, authentic facts that I can trust. And then you can build, and then if you have an AI system that's, doing its thing and spits this thing out the end and talks like it's very factual. I asked an AI about myself, and it had credited me with writing several standards that I never wrote. I'm well known for implementing them, but I never wrote the standard. So that was false. That was a lie. So, and think about how many of those lies are slipping through by people that are now relying on AIs to give you you go to any web service these days, and you got we splash some AI on this, right? I stay a mile away from that stuff, because I don't trust any of it. The shift that needs to be made is to first of all, eliminate hallucinations. And the way you do that is you run your stuff through your LLM that's trained on web data, Llama and OpenAI is all trained on web data. Think about where that data actually is. It's a bunch of and that data is designed to keep me online as long as possible, sell me ads for shit I don't need. And so we're basically creating toxic children. All the AI that exists, OpenAI, Llama, are toxic children. Totally. And we got to watch out. We got to watch out for those children, right?
You can create veracity measures, and we need to start having healthy babies and build healthy AI babies that are going to want to grow up and take care of us.
That we raise with our values, right?
Yeah.
And that I trust my children with my life, because I know the values that they encompass, right? They're not always the same as mine, but I know who they are and what they stand for. I don't trust Facebook. I don't trust Microsoft, the OpenAI owners, the Facebook, the Llama owners. I don't trust Google. I don't trust Apple, because I know the organizations built with centralized systems control that are only meant to extract value from the earth for shareholder profit.
So that AI could work in humanity's favor and actually love us
exactly.
As we love creatures of the earth, we could extinct creatures, but we love them. We love the bears and the deer
Exactly.
there. It's like,
Yeah, that's a really good example. I'm an active hiker in Vancouver, and if I cross paths with a bear, all it does is 20 seconds and I'm a dead man, right? Like that bear is powerful, and like I always joke that I take a half an hour walk into the woods and I could physically feel myself moving down the food chain, right? Like, right.
yeah,
So,
totally. Funny. Yeah.
um, but
Yeah.
not that said, they're lovable creatures. Honestly, they don't want to eat me. So the only reason they would attack me is if they're scared, and if they feel like I'm between them and their children, or I startled one and it's like, oh, what are you like? It's gonna start swiping, right? So let's not create like AI that starts swiping. Like my bear safety is like when you hike, you make some noise so the bear knows you're around. And when you see a bear, they just kind of lumber like, oh, what's that? Oh, some stupid noisy thing. I'm just going to go over here now. They don't want to bother. They're just going to do their own thing. So that's, to me, is the same principle, right? Like, yes, AI is super powerful. It's going to be more powerful than me. If I stand up next to AI and it decides to take a swipe, yes, it'll take my head off, right? But if I have good bear aware safety around it, I treat AI the same way. And I respect the bears and I respect AI. And I'm willing to acknowledge when something is more powerful than me and where I fit into the scale of things. But then it's like, how can I make myself friendly and useful in the position where I am? And that's how I approach AI as well. And I think in order for us to get to that vision of AI, we need to keep AI in check. And one of the most important things I can do as an archivist is provide factual veracity checks into LLM pipelines, so at the very end, when it goes to present the information to a human, there's at least a veracity check by a service like Orcfax that says, let's just double check that you aren't lying. You said Peter created the standard. Actually, he didn't. So that's a lie. That's not a fact. That's a lie. So let's take that out of the output. And then so that what comes out is only facts. So now you've taken advantage of the power of this giant grizzly bear of intelligence, and which may be swiping in multiple directions that you can't trust. But at least there's the human at the end going, hi, bear, that was very nice. What you got? Okay, there you go. Here's the facts. Right. So I think that's the vision for AI we should be living, and stop living in fear, and stop living and take charge of the technology.
That's incredible. I'm so excited for the future of Orcfax. For your updates, for what you have going on. We'll post the Catalyst proposals. There's 4 of them going on right now, right? With the Explorer, the architecture validating, L2 consensus and rewardings. Staking, rewarding the good behavior. I like that. What is the best way for people to follow what you're doing and get in touch with Orcfax?
Go to orcfax.io, orcfax.io. And there's links to all our socials. The main places we're active is in Twitter and Discord. And if you have any questions, we have community managers in Discord all day long. So we answer questions. We're pretty engaged with our community. We get a lot of good ideas from our community. So if you want to get involved in this discussion, if you've got some ideas about the things I said, please pop into our Discord and share them with us. We love to. We're all nerds. We love to talk about this stuff. Like we think this is fascinating. And we're trying to build a community of like-minded people that are interested in these ideas and these hard problems. And we get a lot of good ideas from our community, or sometimes we start going one direction, and our community goes, well, wait a second, maybe that, and so I consider community engagement an important part of the actual product development lifecycle. And so I encourage people to check it out. And then if you want to be funny and degen and meme like, of course we got Twitter presence as well. And if anybody knows me online, I tend to have a bit of a pretty abrasive, loud personality on Twitter, because I'm a Dutchman. I like to have fun that way. So Twitter is a bit like, I don't consider it like really, it's just for fun in my opinion, and getting the word out here and there. But if you really want to chat and engage, come to our Discord channel. Yeah,
Discord's great. I learned a lot from just looking at what you guys have to say, and it's nice staying current and update with what you guys have going on. Peter, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for all the history. I felt like that was so wonderful to hear your story. What motivates you. I'm inspired now just doing this interview with you to get out there and make sure I'm doing the best that I could do with the talents that I have. So thank you so much for your work, just in general. I think that you're moving humanity in a positive way, and you have just scratched the surface of what your life's work will be about and what you're known for. We'll see what the AI has to say about you 10 years from now.
I love it. Thanks so much, Derek. I really enjoyed this conversation. We'll talk again.